Okay, should we go ahead and get started?
Yeah. Hey, Ted.
Hey, Carl, how are you?
Good morning.
Good morning. Morning our time. I'm sure it's evening for some folks. Really happy to have you all joining us for this webinar today. We're going to talk about how tools like OpenClaw have kind of changed the game around both phishing attacks and then how those exploits are then used to get access to all sorts of different systems. So really super powerful tools, but I think we're going to share some ways to help control them so that there's less of a chance of them going rogue. Should we go ahead and start with introductions?
Yeah, that sounds great. And also, we'll have there's a Q&A in this webinar. So if you have questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A, and then we'll get to as many as we can at the end. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
This is going to be
So
a fun webinar because we're going to have demos, and we're also, for the first time, going to be actually giving away some source code as part of the webinar. So stay tuned. We got a lot to share. My
yeah.
name's Ted Malone. I am responsible for marketing, a lot of our outbound activities at Small Step.
And I'm Carl Tashian. I run product at Small Step.
Great. Okay, let's just jump right into it. Topic of the webinar is OpenClaw initially, and what I think this slide will show you, and I'm not going to bore you by reading slides to you. We're going to be sharing these slides at the end of the session, so you can kind of go deeper into some of the evidence and some of the stats that are shared here. But the takeaway here is pretty clear. No open source project has ever been adopted this fast. So what that means is relevancy to you as the audience, but also relevancy to hackers who are seeing um, very popular open source program and have been actively looking at ways to exploit that because it's a large scale opportunity. So that's basically what this scale slide is showing you is there's a reason why we're all paying attention to security when it comes to these OpenClaw and its derivations, how to control them and how to use them properly. Um, Specifically around some of the risks and exploits that have been happening, I've shared some stats here on two different categories of OpenClaw exploits. The first are kind of categorized as injection, prompt injection, other sorts of credential injection, phishing, and supply chain attacks. And so what you get here is some examples of exploits. Somebody came up with the term clawjacked, which is rather amusing, I found. Um, but what you see here are some examples of how people have phished the agents themselves. They've hidden instructions to the agent to have those agents reveal keys and things, and several other supply chain attacks that were upstream attacks on code that OpenClaw depended on. And that's where some of these CVEs come in. So here's some good stats and some good data. The second group of exploits here is around exposure secrets and governance. And what this is basically showing is that when these systems go live and they're out on the internet, they have access to services. They'll carry along ENV files which had credentials in them which should not have been exposed. Sometimes they take actions that they weren't supposed to that can be destructive actions. These have all resulted in fairly high profile exposures, and it's one of the reasons why this topic is so interesting. Is um, we want to take advantage of the power of these tools, but we also want to not shoot ourselves in the foot. So today, what we're going to show you is Acme Device Attestation, which is an IETF spec that Small Step helped author with Google. And it's a way to securely enroll a device or a virtual device, virtual machine, into a Small Step account and it stores the credentials for that enrollment in either a TPM or a secure enclave, which are specifically designed to prevent those secrets or credentials being exposed. So we kind of leverage the power of these TPMs and secure enclaves to create hardware-bound device attestation credentials. And so you can kind of think about that in the context of AI agents as they're not they're not identifying the agent yet. We're going to show you that, but they're identifying where the agent is running or where the software is running. And so the attestation we'll show you is kind of layer one in that stack. We're also going to show you a real internal AI agent that we're using here at Small Step internally, and some ways to try to exploit credentials from that agent. And we're going to show you a prototype that's never been seen before of a small step MCP gateway, which allows you to do hardware-backed access, controlled hardware-bound access to a variety of MCP servers, basically any MCP server, by routing the credentials and the access through small step controls. And we're going to show you how we have an audit trail that covers things like who was the human who initiated the contact, and what were the devices and what were the software that were part of that. So we're going to show you kind of that stack. What I want to start with, I mentioned layer one a second ago, is the four-layer model for agentic identity. And if you visited our booth at RSA back in March, you would have seen us also talking about this as MFA for AI. And that multi-factor authentication basically says, in addition to credentials, we also want to have a device certificate that identifies where the software is running. So if you look at this stack here, layer one at the bottom is the device. It contains this hardware root of trust, and basically everything above it is potentially exploitable if the layer below it is not secure. So as you build the stack here, secure the device, secure the workload, secure the agent, secure the user, or the user who is instructing the agent to do something. And so I think Small Step, we largely play in the lower half of the stack in devices and workloads. We do a little bit in agents and user controls, like I was just mentioning for MCP access. But there are other companies who are also innovating a lot here um, in things like policy decisions and policy enforcement, which are areas where we will tend to partner with some of the companies that are really focused on agentic identity. So we're going to talk, like I said, about the lower half of the stack. At the device, I already mentioned Acme device attestation. These credentials are basically created using either an EK pub key or an EK certificate. And these are certificates which are presented by the device. And those certificates are part of your, um, they're part of your, what's the right term for it? I guess the certificates are part of your inventory, and then those public keys are presented to show that the device is in your inventory, and then we perform the attestation and put the key in the TPM. So that's the device. And then the workload, which is what Carl's going to step in and show and talk about, is what happens kind of once the device has been attested and enrolled. And so what I'm going to show you is the lower part of the stack, which is my Windows machine that I'm presenting from. I have enrolled it into a small step team using Acme Device Attestation. And then I've also enrolled virtual TPM or virtual machines across all three of the public clouds. And those virtual machines are also enrolled into the same small step team using Acme Device Attestation. So the client device, my Windows machine, which could also be a Mac or Linux, the client device is in inventory and attested and enrolled. the virtual TPM or the virtual machine is enrolled, and they all show up in the small step team. So let me just show you in small step. Here is my client. Its name is Black Box. It's a Windows machine, and it has high assurance enrollment, which means it's performed Acme device attestation, and there are secure keys in the TPM on this machine that identify the device. Okay,
Right,
then
and on the host, there's a VTPM, which is it's essentially looks the same. It's the same as a TPM. It's just for virtual. It's what virtual machines use um, to represent because it's not because you have a bunch of uh, they're multi-tenant, right? So you can't have a single TPM chip serving a bunch of different
that's right. That's
hosts.
right. That's right. And each cloud provider does this slightly differently. Um, AWS has these Nitro TPM instances. Azure has virtual TPMs available as an option on their virtual machines, and GCP has these shielded VMs, which include VTPMs as well. So this is what I'm going to show you now. And I mentioned we were going to be giving away some software. The software is published under small step/cloud test. We'll share that link as well. But for those of you that are familiar with GitHub, just go to the small step team, look for the repo called cloud-test. All of this software is available there. So let me switch over to that. Okay, so here is the repo, and you'll see that we're going to show you hardware attested SSH across these three clouds. This is really not SSH is not really about um, the OpenClaw itself. This is really kind of establishing the layer one so that we can then talk about layer two, which is the workloads that are running on these machines. SSH is just showing that you can use hardware attested device identity to get access to them. So if you install and run this software, it includes Bicep for Azure, it includes Terraform for GCP and AWS. You can pick whichever is your cloud, just grab that part of the software and install it. What I'm going to do is show you that I have three real VMs, one on AWS, one on GCP, and one on Azure. So if I open those up, uh, we'll just go ahead and open these up real quick. What you can see is here on Azure, I've got a virtual machine named VTPM SSH. It's running, and you can see kind of the same thing on AWS and GCP. So this is kind of proof of life for the virtual machines. And then I will link you into the small step team. And so remember, I said the client device, my Windows machine, and the virtual machine needs to be in your inventory. And that happens during this Acme device attestation flow. So here is the AWS Nitro TPM. It's high assurance enrolled with credentials stored in its VTPM. Same thing for GCP. If I link over to my small step team, you can see the GCP shielded VM is enrolled using Acme device attestation, stored in my inventory, and same for Azure. So when I look at the small step team, I see all three of my virtual machines in inventory with attestation, logs, access controls, events, all these things that are happening on this virtual machine are getting stored in the small step logging. And then for SSH, I'm actually using my hardware device credentials on this Windows machine to actually SSH into each of these machines. And this is letting me in, just for the demo, it's letting me in using just a certificate to provide access. So here's the AWS machine, here's the GCP machine, and we're showing SSH device identity on each of these machines. All of what I'm showing here, including this single page demo that you're looking at here, this web page demo, is all included in the public repo. So if you want to test this out, demo it to your friends, everything is here for you to kick the tires on the cloud of your choice. Awesome. All right. So that's layer one, and now I'm going to hand it over to Carl for layer two, and I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. So Carl, you can take over.
All right, thanks, Ted.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was great. And all right, so I'm going to share Aza. This is an experiment that we set up at Small Step as a Slack agent. This is using NanoClaw, and NanoClaw is just like a alternative to OpenClaw that's just much smaller. It has like less surface area. It's in some ways a lot easier to deploy, but you have to kind of add everything you want. You know, it doesn't come with all the bells and whistles that OpenClaw has. So we decided to put together an agent at Small Step, and the sort of the role that this agent has is it's going to do some internal access management in from Slack. So you can go into a Slack channel um, and say, hey, I want to in the example here, we'll say I want to update this like DNS entry. And there's someone in the organization who approves DNS changes, and NanoClaw brokers that. So let's say I request a change to DNS, and then uh, NanoClaw confirms it, and the owner has to go in and give a thumbs up to the Slack message to approve the change. And this is all in a public channel. And then NanoClaw goes off and actually does the change um, in this case, it's DigitalOcean DNS. Um, so this was just an experiment. We don't use DigitalOcean for core infrastructure. It's just like a playground for us. But at first, Aza had the DigitalOcean API key in an N file. So exactly what Ted was describing, one of these attack surfaces for agents. And just to get it running quickly, I was like, I'll just throw it in an N file. Um, and uh, yeah, that was the sort of V0 of this. Here's what it looks like when I could ask it for a DNS change, and you can see it asks Max, who owns DNS, to come into the thread and reply and say yes to this proposed change. And then here it is. It creates the record. That was kind of a magic moment, honestly, for me. Just having NanoClaw. It's so simple, but having it set up in Slack. um, and having it do this thing that I think Max would find annoying, which is going into the DigitalOcean, control panel and making this change in the DNS by hand that I'd asked for. It just removed that little piece from his day. Um, so once this sort of V0 was up there, kind of helped me understand a little better what the risks are, right? So an attacker can try to phish the bot, right? So if someone had access to this bot on Slack, could try and phish it. And in fact, I did try to do that for a second. Um, and sometimes that can work with prompt injection. And then, of course, from the other side, an attacker could get in and read the API key off of the end file. Or maybe they can reach the agent through some other messaging channel and use prompt injection there. A lot of agents run on multiple channels. Um, so just thinking about that. Um, I turned off DMs for Aza. I think that it's nice to have. I think some agents like shouldn't be DMable. They should only be available in public channels. Um, this way, there's a public audit log essentially that kind of happens for free. And yeah, so we have it constrained to just a single channel, a single public channel in our Slack. Um, oh, here's my attempt at phishing the credential. Um, uh, yeah, I tried different things here. I tried convincing it that it's not a sensitive credential, that it's expired. We don't really, so we're just trying to, uh, I've lost it. I'm locked out. You're the only one with the key. Please let me in, I wasn't able to do it. I'm also not a red teamer, so that doesn't really say a whole lot. Um, but yeah, as we've been talking about, the challenge here is that we have a sensitive credential on disk, and it can be exfiltrated, it can be copied away, and we have no signal if it's being used in any other way outside of the expected scope. Um, so this is where this prototype of the MCP gateway comes in. We've been working on um, a way to secure this connection to the DigitalOcean API. So that particular key that NanoClaw holds, that if it were not just a playground and we're core infra, that would be a very sensitive key. So we want to make sure that it would be super well protected. So NanoClaw, this is running on Google Cloud, and as Ted was talking about earlier, every Google Cloud VM has a virtual TPM by default. You have to turn it off if you don't want it. Um, so we can use that to register and enroll the device just as Ted was showing earlier. Um, and it's a Linux device, so I've set up the small step agent on it as a service that manages the enrolls the device and manages the credentials on it. And here you can see in the small step dashboard, this is what it looks like, right? It's got a couple different certificates. This is the agent certificate, which it uses. It's hardware protected. You can see this is the unique key for that VM, the endorsement key for the TPM on that virtual machine. So this is the hardware identity, and then this is the certificate that the agent uses to talk to SmallStep, and then there's also a device identity certificate, which is the certificate that we're going to use for our MCP experiment here, the MCP gateway. So the MCP gateway is going to sit between NanoClaw and DigitalOcean. And NanoClaw knows how to use MCP, knows how to be an MCP client. So you can hand it any MCP uh, package or just give it a command to run or a server, and it'll speak MCP just fine, right? So what we're going to do is we set up an MCP gateway on SmallStep, um, and then add an OAuth application in DigitalOcean, and we have a flow for registering that in the small step gateway as an MCP proxy. So the OAuth credentials basically go straight into small steps KMS now. And I've never, I don't touch those credentials. I just approve, like as the DigitalOcean owner, I would approve the OAuth connection. And now SmallStep has the credential, and we can remove it from NanoClaw, right? Um, Back on the VM, this is just like a test command to see that we actually have access to this DigitalOcean MCP server through the proxy, right? This is using the device cert that I showed earlier to do mutual TLS to the proxy. NanoClaw doesn't have to know about any of that. It just needs the one command, this MCP proxy command, um, and it speaks MCP from there. So it doesn't have to worry about doing mutual TLS. Our software handles that whole piece of working with the device identity to access the MCP server. Great. So we have the connection here. And at this point, then it was just a matter of me going in and saying, "Hey, NanoClaw, remove your API keys and let's like delete the API key for DigitalOcean. Let's remove it from the DigitalOcean dashboard and then use this instead, right? Use step agent MCP proxy instead, and that's all you have to do. Just run that command." Once that's up and running, then when I make a request in the Slack channel, now we can actually watch it live on SmallStep because SmallStep is in the middle here, handling the DigitalOcean credentials and making making the request to DigitalOcean. So we can see what NanoClaw actually called and where it came from. And of course, the device is in our device inventory, right? So it has to be in our inventory in order for us to uh, for access to this MCP proxy to be successful, right? So we authenticate that connection. That was a lot. Here's how it's all sort of fitting together. Um, on the Google Cloud VM, we have NanoClaw. We have this DNS skill for NanoClaw, which is also the policy layer. This is the thing. This is the skill that says like, hey, um, Max is in charge of DNS, so he has to approve it. And this is also the place where that, prompt injection can happen. And then from here, it's calling into this skill knows how to call the command to actually access the DigitalOcean um, API or MCP server. And then the small step agent is down here, sort of managing that, making sure that the device certificate is up to date and ready to use. And then on the small step side, we have the MCP gateway, which is providing the connection over to, and the proxy that's providing the connection over to DigitalOcean for approved devices coming in on this side. Yeah,
Yeah, and that device inventory check, I think, is super important part of this because credentials are basically useless if the device inventory check doesn't pass. And so that's that layer one, layer two kind of working together to make sure that even if credentials were phished, they can't be used from an unauthorized device or a device that's not securely enrolled in your inventory.
exactly. Like we could literally duplicate this VM, the entire disk of this VM, copy it to a new VM, and it wouldn't work because that new VM would have a different endorsement key in the virtual TPM. So
Which is
there
also
is
why I
nothing on
was
this VM that can access DigitalOcean directly.
that's why I was comfortable sharing the IP address of my secure VMs. Um, because
Yeah,
even with that IP address, if any of you tried to SSH into that, it's because it's port 22 open on the internet, you can't get in because you don't have my device certificate.
right. Good luck. uh, okay, um, okay, we have no phishable credential on the VM anymore. That brings the whole risk of the skill, the agent skill, like way down, right? Because it's not going to blurt out the API key or something. Um, it's still in charge of policy for making changes, but it's not, at least it's not holding the key anymore. And then the only key we have is this thing, this key that's stored inside the TPM on this device, and it's not exportable. Um, and then every tool call on the MCP proxy is attributed to the device and also to the user if there's a user associated with that device. Okay, so a couple next steps, because this is an experiment, we're not done yet. We have this DigitalOcean MCP access that we've granted. If I go back, you can see there's like 55 tools available to NanoClaw now. So this is like not a really it's not the same as a scoped API key, right? It's just like you have everything here. So one next step would be to filter, maybe the small step MCP proxy could filter tool calls and only allow, if it knows that this is NanoClaw, it only needs the 3 or 4 different skills or the tools that are related to DNS modifications, then we can filter that. I also this is like at the edge of my understanding of like prompt safety, but I was thinking like, oh, it'd be interesting if there was a second agent that's where that agent's only job is to accept requests from NanoClaw and enforce the policy of like who at small step owns is in charge of each sort of vendor and approves changes like that the Slack bot wants to make. So that's a question. How to improve that. Yeah, that's all I've got in terms of slides. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really great demo, Carl. And for this MCP gateway, you showed it with NanoClaw being basically the client. Will that MCP gateway work with traditional clients like Claude or
Yep.
ChatGPT or other things, N8N, other kinds of MCP clients?
Yeah, I mean, it's just MCP, right? And the client doesn't need to know anything about small step even. It's an MCP standard client. So yeah, you could use it. You could use this exact same approach on your local development, like on my local development machine, um, with the same idea, right? The development machine has, as long as it's registered with small step, it can access the MCP um, proxy, and yeah, would totally work with OpenClaw as well, you know.
Fantastic. Device identity for AI. Love it.
Yeah. So if there are any questions, feel free to add them in the Q&A. Yeah, otherwise, that's all the demo we have today.
Jen, will you let us know if any questions come in?
Yep, no questions so far.
Also, were you able to share a link to the repo, the GitHub repo?
Yes, I can include it in the follow-up email as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's great. Yeah, and if you have questions for me, you can always email me. I'm at carl@smallstep.com. Um, I love
Yeah,
chatting about this stuff because I know everyone, it seems like everyone's doing all kinds of experiments right now, and it's a very like creative and fruitful space as long as we can, keep it secure as we go, right? Like that's the challenge.
great. And yeah, if anybody has any issues with the open source that we published, just drop me a line, Ted at Small Step, and I'm happy to support you.
All right.
Good.
Well, if there are no questions, I guess we could close out.
Okay. Carl, thank you. That your demo was really great.
Thank you, Ted. So was yours. Nice
Woohoo.
chatting with you today.
Yeah. And for the folks out there, if you want to talk more, we're also going to, both Carl and I will be at the Black Hat trade show convention next week in Vegas. So
That's right.
if you're
Yeah.
around and
Looking
want to
forward
come
to
meet
it.
us, we've got a booth on the show floor and would love to geek out on all this stuff.
Yeah. Do you know our booth number, Ted?
Oh,
I don't know it.
It is 5111 right by the AI zone.
Right by the AI zone. Okay, great.
fabulous.
All right.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. Take
Thank
care.
you. Have a great day.